Hello, welcome to the FanDuel Punch Out. I'm Big Italy 42. He is Spencer Limbach at Spencer_JL. And tonight's slate has a ton of aces, so much different slate than what we've been seeing recently. Been having to force bad pitchers in. Last night it was pretty much you play Clayton Kershaw or you lose, as it is a lot of times with Clayton Kershaw. But tonight, a lot of options, going to be a lot of diversity in all formats. We've got a Coors Field game. We got big names. It's going to be a really interesting night to see what route everyone takes. So definitely not going to be a whole lot of chalk plays on this slate tonight.
Yeah, like you said, it really depends on what you want to do with your lineup configuration. If you want to get the big bats in, there's certainly some higher priced bats in great situations in that Colorado game. So maybe you can dip down to the bargain pitchers, stack Coors. That seems like a pretty good strategy as of late. Looks like it could be one again, but then again, you're missing out on the top guys like Max Scherzer, Felix, and Corey Kluber. So I mean, it's just weighing between the two and kind of messing around with lineups and seeing what you like. But if you are paying up, I think Corey Kluber is the guy that I like. He's a little bit cheaper than Felix and Max Scherzer. Actually, quite a bit cheaper than Scherzer, 1,000 less, which really comes in handy in a day like this when you need every penny to get the bats that you want in Coors Field. So I like Kluber against the White Sox. White Sox really don't have much to threaten him with. He's at home, one of the highest favorites of the day. He's a minus 180 right now. I'm not sure if that line changed. That's what he was yesterday. But has some of the best Vegas odds in his favor tonight. And the last time he took on the White Sox, he just dominated. I think 12 strikeouts was the line he put up. So if you're paying up, he's the guy. Otherwise, Felix, he just hasn't been impressive as of late. I know he's at home, but pretty good Toronto lineup. I just don't think he has the upside that you want out of him for 11.3K, so I'd rather have Kluber. And like we said, Scherzer might be a bit too expensive given a road matchup at Pittsburgh, who is just a pesky hitting team. And he's actually not favored by very much. He's a minus 125 favorite. So if you're paying up that much, you really want a guy who can lock down a win. I think Kluber can do that. Plus, he has that strikeout upside you're looking for.
Yeah, and Washington really just hasn't been scoring much as a team either. So, I mean, his chances of getting a lot of run support probably not very good. So I'm with you. I think Kluber definitely the guy that I want as well. I think that Felix probably a guy I prefer more in GPPs there, but Scherzer I think is an okay option too. But like you said, much bigger of a favorite. I think Kluber, especially on FanDuel where you really need that win, I think he's the guy that you want. Talking about a couple other options here that we were going over before the show, and we'll throw these your way and see what we can find. An interesting thing that we've noticed, obviously, the St. Louis Cardinals have been absolutely terrible against left-handed pitching. They got mowed down by Cy Danks the other day, so I'm throwing out my bargain bin GPP special as Manny Banuelos. Not a guy that's going to pitch deep into games. He's only made 3 starts, but did have 7 Ks and 5 2/3 against Washington. Didn't only have 1 strikeout against Milwaukee and didn't make it through the 5th inning against the Cubs. But he also hasn't given up a lot of runs. Walks have been his biggest struggle, 6 walks in his last 2 starts. So if he can keep the walks down, I mean, and he gives you 5-6 quality innings, probably won't get the win because you don't expect much run support on the other side. But I think at $5,900, might be able to get you 10 to 12 FanDuel points, and that's going to be plenty for a Coors stack tonight.
Yeah, I really don't mind that pick, but I'm actually looking on the other side of that game at Tim Cooney. He steps in at about a 175 favorite, so very good odds to get the win, which is important for a guy at that price range, 6.2K. If he can get the win, go 5-6 innings, give you maybe 4, 5, 6 strikeouts, which is actually something he's done in 3 of the last 4 starts. So you think that he'd be able to do it at home against this anemic Atlanta offense. I really like Tim Cooney. If you're digging down, you want a guy who's in a good position to get a win. Maybe rack up 13 or so fantasy points and then just stack the Coors game around that. Yeah, he's the guy that I'm going with for that strategy.
Yeah, I don't blame you there. I think that's a fine spot, especially with his chance to get the win there. And as far as middling options here, there's a couple guys that are interesting. Not a whole lot of guys that really stand out. Andrew Kashner against the Miami Marlins. We know how bad the Marlins are. Cashner hasn't been great recently, but did go 7 2/3 in his last game. He's gone 7+ in 2 of his last 3 starts. So he's a guy that doesn't have a whole lot of upside, and he has struggled with left-handed bats this year. A couple decent lefties in that lineup, but I think at 7,300, he's a fine GPP option that could end up paying off that price tag for you.
Yeah, and one more GPP guy I'm going to throw out is Chris Tillman at Tampa. That is, there's a pitcher-friendly park there, and he was great in his last start at Detroit. I'm sure that's more of an anomaly than anything, so don't read into it too much. But the Rays have been bad lately. I think over the past month, they have one of the worst WOBAs overall, one of the worst strikeout rates. Granted, they've been up against some pretty good pitching, and Tillman isn't necessarily falling into that category. But I don't know. The matchups there, he's not in a great line to get the win against Archer, but I don't know. Archer hasn't been invincible lately, and Baltimore is a pretty good lineup. So I think maybe if I'm rolling out a bunch of tournament lineups, I'm going to throw Chris Tillman into the mix.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, he's a guy that's talented. We saw it last year. I mean, he had a good season, got off to a really rough start this season, and then, like you said, he's had a couple good performances. So maybe tonight's another one of those. Maybe he's got some confidence now, finally. So outside of that, really nobody that stands out. I mean, you got a couple of guys in okay spots. You got Michael Pineda, but he's on the road at Minnesota, where Minnesota's pretty good. Jesse Chavez is usually a pretty good option, but at San Francisco, you like the ballpark for him, but San Francisco also pretty hot offense as of late. So
and they don't strike out, really.
Yeah, exactly. So not a whole lot of upside there. All right, catcher options. As always, when there's a Coors Field game, you're looking to find some cheap exposure. Depending on who's in the lineup for the Reds, you can get Tucker Barnhart at 2,800, Brian Pena at 27. Brian Pena, 2,700 there. So those are going to be two guys you look at. You expect Nick Hundley will be in the lineup, $3,500. Pretty pricey for him, although he did homer in his last game. So he'll be a guy that some people will definitely be looking to. But I know there was one other guy that you're looking at that I liked as well. So who's somebody else you're looking at catcher?
A couple guys. I like the catchers. I should say the catching options. The catchers listed on FanDuel from the Detroit game. So Victor Martinez, 3.3. I think he's one of the top overall catchers of this slate, but you don't necessarily have to squeeze him in because, I mean, he's relatively expensive compared to, wanting to get exposure to other expensive guys. I don't think that's where you want to allocate your salary cap if you don't have to. So having said that, I think Alex Avila, his teammate, against Rick Porcello in Boston at 2.4K is a pretty decent punt play here with a little bit of upside in that park shift. And as we were saying before the show, maybe he has a read on some of Porcello's pitches because he's caught him over all these years. Porcello used to be a Tiger, and Rick Porcello's just been bad this year, so especially against left-handed hitters. So I really don't mind that pick if you need a punt play to round out your lineup. The general strategy with catcher today is just kind of fill out your lineups, get the hitters that you want, the big guys you want, like Joey Votto, Todd Frazier, other Colorado, Cincinnati bats, and then come back to catcher, see how much cap space you have left, and look for reasonable options in that range. That's what I'm doing here. So, whether it's the Cincinnati guys or Avila or anyone else, the problem with the Cincinnati guys is that you can only get 4 of them on FanDuel. So I don't know if you want to burn one of your spots there on a guy like Pena or Barnhart, who have lower upside than the others, considering the price. So I might just punt the position and go with a guy like Alex Avila.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll throw out 2 more guys real quick. Stephen Vogt, $2,700 against Jake Peavy in a fine spot, and then Yan Gomes crushes lefties, $2,500. You don't love the matchup with Quintana's actually been pretty good, but he's a nice cheap option. But I'm with you there. Go back and see whatever fits because your other positions are going to be pretty important tonight as well.
Right.
All right, first base. I'll save one guy for you that I know we both like, so I don't sound like a homer. But I like Paul Goldschmidt a lot. Again, $4,700. He's pricey, but he's been just absolutely killing the ball. Once again, he's hitting well at home. He hits righties almost as well as he hits lefties, actually. Jimmy Nelson, been really inconsistent, and I'm loving that his price has been dropping. But I know right behind him is the guy that you and I are going to be playing all over the place.
Yeah, so to save you from being a homer, Mark Reynolds in a righty-lefty match. I caught you right as you were drinking too. That was perfect.
I almost lost
I was
it.
waiting for the spit to come out. Yeah, you're a huge Cardinals fan, so that's who I thought you were thinking of. But
I hate you.
no, Joey Votto is the number one overall play, regardless of position, regardless of price tonight. I think he's the guy you want in your lineups. 4.5K. He's just been awesome as of late, getting on base, hitting home runs, doing everything you want him to do. Vintage Joey Votto, as I would say. And he gets Eddie Butler tonight, who is just a bad pitcher. Cincinnati roughed him up in Cincinnati, so, I mean, you can imagine what they're going to do to him in Coors Field. He has a 414 WOBA against left-handed hitters, 377 against righties, so everyone hits him. I think Votto is the play. And, there's other good options in at first base today, but none that are really in the same category as Votto, so I think that's an easy pick there at first base. But yeah, otherwise, if you do need someone cheaper or you're trying to steer away from the popular pick, the other side of the same game, Ben Paulson is only 2.5K, which is extremely cheap for a starter with power in Coors Field. Everyone else gets a price hike when they're playing in Colorado, but Paulson is near minimum salary, so you can consider that. Hope he gets a home run. Hope Votto is at least tame in his production. And then you'll be ahead of the curve, allowing yourself to spend on other positions. So I think that's a nice GPP strategy.
Yeah, I like that as well. And one more guy I'm going to throw out is a GPP play. Lucas Duda, $2,200 men's salary against the lefty, and it is a lefty-lefty matchup, but Duda actually has way better splits against lefties than righties this season. He's batting 303 against lefties as opposed to 212 versus righties. He's also batting 86 points higher at home than on the road. So seems like a matchup you want to avoid, but it really isn't. So Lucas Duda, if I'm not playing a Coors guy at first base, he's going to be one of my favorite GPP guys, because if you're punting first base with a guy with power like Duda, then you can easily fit in one of these big name pitchers and get yourself a nice floor as well.
And we should say that Ian Thomas, the spot starter for the Dodgers, for the Dodgers, filling in for Greinke today. He's been bad at the AAA level. He has a 6.3 ERA, 8 games, 5 starts. So you're not afraid to target against him in this matchup. So keep an eye on some of the Mets bats. I know none of them really inspire a ton of confidence, but if you need a cheap filler, you got a guy in a good situation. That's not a bad matchup to look at.
Yeah, I am definitely on board with that. All right, second base options. You mentioned before the show, we were talking about how Brandon Phillips didn't really get much of a price increase at all, maybe a few $100s at most. He was right around $3K yesterday. Now going to Colorado, you got to like him batting at top that order. $200 more than him, Robinson Cano just continues to hit well, finally. 4 of his last 6 games with multi-hits, 2 of those with 3 hits. And facing off against Drew Hutchison, or I'm sorry, not Drew Hutchison. Yeah, it is Drew Hutchison today, who is much worse against righties, actually decent against lefties, but still a guy that you don't mind targeting with really a guy who's one of the hotter hitters in baseball right now.
Yeah, and with Hutchinson, it's kind of strange because that's been his tendency this season, is that he's easier against righties, but over the past 3, he has a 337 WOBA against lefties, so I don't know what to make of that, but this isn't a matchup to fear for Cano. So the way I see second base tonight is cash games, click in Brandon Phillips, move along, GPP swerve, go to Cano. Otherwise, if you want someone cheap, Wilmer Flores is minimum salary, and like we said, going against Ian Thomas, the spot starter. Hey, I got it right that time. Against the Dodgers, righty-lefty matchup, we know Flores has a little bit of power, even though he hasn't shown it lately. This might be the matchup to bring it back around.
Yeah, and I'll throw out Ian Kinsler also. He's just been absolutely incredible recently. He's got 10 hits in his last 4 games, 6 of them extra base hits. So definitely consider him as a swerve in GPPs also.
And we should say that aside from this Colorado Cincinnati matchup with an 11 over-under, Detroit and Boston is the next highest at 9, and then there's really not much else. Everything else is around 7 and 8 or 7.5. So those are the two games to target. If you can't find a good player from Cincinnati or Colorado, or you used all those options, you picked your 4 players from one side, then looking at this Detroit Red Sox matchup, it's probably the way to go.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Third base options, speaking of Cincinnati and Colorado, your top 2 options by far are Todd Frazier and Nolan Arenado, both going against weak pitchers, both in good spots. Both guys in righty-righty matchups, but that really doesn't matter to you because both guys actually hit righties pretty well this season as well. Both guys with a ton of power. Actually, 2 of the better power hitters in all of baseball, both in Coors Field. This is one that there's not a chance I won't have one or the other in my cash games tonight.
Yeah, I agree. It's just deciding which one. And kind of as I was saying earlier, is that you can only have 4 Reds tonight. So that kind of, changes things. And there's a lot of well-priced options in the outfield for Cincinnati. So, speaking to that point, it might be more beneficial to go with Nolan Arenado with similar upside, and then it allows you to grab one more Cincinnati bat in the outfield. Even though I think Todd Frazier is the better play today, if that makes sense. Just kind of looking at it from an opportunity cost standpoint of who else can I grab if I go with Arenado, like, say, a Marlon Byrd or someone like that, as we'll get into. But, yeah, they're definitely the top 2 players, so just kind of going back and forth, deciding between the 2 is going to be the decision of third base tonight. Otherwise, if you want a GPP pick, or you're paying up at pitcher and you want a guy with some upside that's cheaper, going away from the herd, Kyle Seager has been on fire. He gets Hutchinson tonight, as we've said, who's kind of been back and forth. Good bat against righties, bad against lefties, but Seager, multi-hit game, past 3, hit a home run in his last game. You like him at home in favorable spots, and this definitely qualifies as such tonight. So 2.8K, I think he's one of the better sub $3,000 picks.
Yeah, definitely with you there. I got one more guy under 3K, Evan Longoria, 2,500 against Chris Tillman. Tillman has struggled with righties this year, and Evan Longoria, if you're a BVP guy, he is one of 2 players who actually has 6 home runs against the opposing pitcher, 40 at-bats against Chris Tillman. He's got 6 homers, 9 total extra base hits. So
who's the other one?
We'll get to him in a minute.
Really?
Yeah.
I honestly don't know who it is.
You're gonna love it. It's okay. A fun one. That you're not gonna play him, but I'll bring him up anyway when we get there. All right. Shortstop options. Troy Tulowitzki, as always, at home, $4,500. He's the guy that you want to get if you can afford him. If you can't afford him, Eugenio Suarez is the guy who's actually done pretty well. Neither one of, I assume it's going to be Nick Hundley, but none of the Colorado catchers good at throwing out runners. Suarez has a little bit of speed. We saw that one game he had with Billy Hamilton. Those 2 were running wild. Wouldn't be surprised to see him be aggressive on the base paths tonight. And he's been a pretty good hitter. I mean, you look in his last 10, he's got a couple home runs. He's got a triple, a couple doubles. So I think he's an okay swerve if you can't afford Tulo.
Yeah, has he been batting 5th or 6th lately?
Yeah, right around there, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I like him, and he actually has a better matchup than Tulo for a cheaper cost. As we said earlier, Eddie Butler, 377 WOBA against righties, so everyone hits him, basically. So if you can't fit Tulo, yeah, he's the way to go. And then again, it brings up the same dilemma we just said about how many Cincinnati bats can you fit in and which ones. So it's just kind of weighing that against itself when assembling lineups. Otherwise, if you need a cheap pick, this is a GPP only. And I think he actually comes with that disclaimer on FanDuel, like next to his name, like don't use for cash games because it's just so ingrained in people's heads. Ian Desmond gets a righty-lefty matchup against Locke. I know it's not a hitter-friendly park at Pittsburgh, especially for right-handed hitters, but Desmond, he's been doing pretty well lately. 3 of the past 4 games, he has multiple hits. We know his production comes and goes in waves, so maybe this is a situation where you ride the wave up, hope he continues it, get some points out of him, get 3 or 4 points, outside chance of upside, and then just spend everywhere else. So 2.5K, I think he's the cheap tournament pick of the night at shortstop.
Yeah, I'll throw out one more guy that's an okay cash game option. Righty-righty matchup, second highest total of the night against a guy who's terrible against righties. Xander Bogaerts, $2,900. If you decide not to go the Coors route, I think he's probably your next best cash game option.
Yep.
All right, outfield. Here's where it's going to be fun tonight because, as always, there are a lot of options. The obligatory mention for Mike Trout. You know the drill there. Charlie Blackmon and Carlos Gonzalez similarly priced. I think you and I both prefer Charlie Blackmon in cash games. He's got a higher floor. He steals bases. He's much better at getting on base. Gonzalez, though, of course, definitely in play as a guy with some upside in your tournaments as well. And the DeSclafani has not been great against lefties. He hasn't been terrible. 337 WOBA allowed. Definitely a guy that you want to get some exposure to. So get both if you can afford him, but Blackman's the guy that I like more. Couple other interesting options. You're going to be looking at your Coors Field there, and you got Jay Bruce versus Marlon Byrd, and Marlon Byrd comes in as $1,000 less than Jay Bruce. Jay Bruce with a little bit more power. This is a decision you and I were weighing a little bit earlier, right before we got on the show, so I don't think you can really go wrong with either one, but I'm probably more likely to take the discount with Marlon Byrd in my cash games.
Yeah, especially you'll probably need that extra $1,000 to get your other Cincinnati bats like Frazier and Votto. So I really like Marlon Byrd. He's typically a guy you want to target against lefties, but I don't think it really matters in this matchup. As we said, Eddie Butler's pretty generous to right-handed hitters as well. And Byrd has the necessary power for a home run or two in this ballpark. So I think he's a great play at 3.1K. His price is mysteriously staying around the same level while everyone else in Coors has their price jacked up. So I'm probably just taking the discount going with him.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm doing the same. I'll throw out a couple other guys real quick. Preston Tucker, $3,400. Struggled in his last game, but that was a lefty-lefty matchup. This guy crushes righties, and Jeremy Guthrie is terrible against lefties, so he's going to go overlooked once again. Double dong the other night. He's a guy that I like quite a bit. And then I'll go ahead and give you Mr. Secret Guy. We kind of talked to him about him a little bit earlier, but Melvin Upton, BJ Upton, has 6 home runs in his life off of off of Dan Herron. And that's not to say
that's what it is.
Yeah.
You just wanted to say against Dan Herron, that's why you brought it up.
Yeah,
it all makes
certainly
sense.
not playing him, but if you're making a BVP lineup, throw him in there at men's salary. Do not play him in your cash games. If you do, blame Spencer.
Yeah, what the I guess I did ask. I said, who was it? And then you said it, so it's kind of my fault.
Yeah.
I'll bear the responsibility.
I blame Dan Herron, honestly.
Yeah. But other guys I like, I think Yoenis Cespedes, 3.4K, has some upside. As we said, the Tigers' offense is in a nice spot, as is Boston in that game. Nice park shift to Fenway Park. He could launch one over the monster today. As we said, Rick Porcello has just been getting smashed left and right. No pun intended. But yeah, him and JD Martinez are nice picks tonight. I'm expecting JD to have some pretty high home run odds as usual, but Cespedes is the cheaper version of him at 3.4K. Otherwise, if we get into the bargain territory, if you're not going with the chalk in BJ Upton, okay, maybe it's not the chalk, but Shane Victorino is a guy I like. He doesn't have a great lineup spot, but I'm expecting the Red Sox to go through the lineup fairly quickly tonight, and he should get us 4 ABs, is Shane Victorino. Verlander has reverse splits, a 347 WOBA against right-handed hitters. Victorino's a guy who could, get a double, steal a base, score a run, and you're set for minimum salary. And then from an opportunity cost standpoint, I don't really see many other guys at minimum salary. You could look towards Ryan Rayburn. I think a lot of people are going to do that tonight. That's not a bad pick. Righty-lefty matchup against Quintana. He's probably batting cleanup, but he's just been pretty bad as of lately. There's a chance he'll get pinch hit later in the game. And Quintana's a pretty good lefty, so I guess you could do that as a minimum salary filler, but I wouldn't. I'd rather go with Victorino. I think he has more upside despite the lineup positioning.
Yeah, I like him. I think he's probably the best cash game min salary play, like you said. I got 2 guys for tournaments at min salary. John Mayberry against a lefty. We mentioned Ian Thomas, not a very good lefty at all. And then Mark Trumbo also. We know the kind of upside he has. You prefer playing Trumbo against a lefty, but he gets a righty who's bad against righties. And at min salary, I don't mind targeting a guy with as much power as Trumbo has, even though he's in Seattle tonight.
Yeah, and before we go, I guess we should tell the viewers about our friendly wager that we have going, so they can offer some input to us on Twitter.
Yep.
We wagered Tim Cooney versus Manny Buenho. How do you say his last name?
Benuelos.
Benuelos. Thank you. You're my pronunciation expert. But yeah, so I have Tim Cooney in fantasy points straight up. He has Manny of Atlanta. We'll just call him that for now. So go ahead and leave a comment in the YouTube section. See which, maybe we should get some live odds going, saying who everyone likes. Maybe a free giveaway or something. I don't know if Sam could hook us up with that on the back end. But yeah, so Tim Cooney versus Manny. Who do you like tonight? I'm going with Cooney. I think it's an easy pick, but for some reason, Big Italy likes Manny, so we'll see.
I'm Team Manny. Team Manny all the way to the bank tonight.
I'm Team Cooney.
All right, we'll start trending those hashtags for you guys.
There we go.
All right, thanks for hanging out with us. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel here, and check out all of our other great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.